what is like your vision? What's your vision for the internet? I mean, I think the answer of like, there's no replacement other than obviously in person, for something like Twitter or like a, very robust group chat. Um, you know, it, it's like it's a moment for us to sort of envision what we do want and what we
Mhm.
think, who we think should be the owners of these platforms. As someone who's an anti-capitalist, I'm like, let's break it up and have it nationalized. But that also is scary for certain reasons. But there could be checks and balances to make it work. But listen, libertarians get to fucking go off about, their visions for the country and the world, and I want to go off as a socialist, on my ideas for what, how it should look, and making space for you as well. Not saying you're a socialist necessarily. I'm just sort of like, what do
I
you
am.
think? Like, what's the there we go. So what's the goal here? What should be what if you were advising this administration or any administration, what's the goal?
Yeah, so I could talk about this for ages, but let's just put it this way. In my view, Mastodon is sometimes presented as like socialist social media, right?
Hmm.
Because it has this kind of decentralized, federalized quality to it. In my view, I see Mastodon as more of like a bit of a cyber libertarian social media, going back to those early days of the internet when there were these ideas around how, the internet was going to empower the individual against the state. And we kind of forgot that corporations exist too. And we're just going to come in and take everything over, right? And so if we were thinking about like what socialist social media is going to look like, I would say one of the fundamental problems we have with digital technology and with the internet is it was privatized in 1995. And then we just kind of assumed that everything that should happen with it from there should be within the realm of the private market, right? Private companies should be able to control whatever. There should be no role for the government, for the state, for the public sector. I would say that I think that we need a greater role for the public sector in developing technology that actually works for the public, right? That doesn't have a profit motive, that isn't designed to kind of extract money from you or data from you in some sort of way, but is designed very explicitly to serve the public in, whatever way is necessary. And I think part of that could be thinking about what a public social media platform would look like, one that doesn't have to, focus you on engagement and on ads all the time, one that doesn't have to extract crazy amounts of data from you so that it can target ads toward you. A platform that's really focused around education, around communication, around different forms of kind of communicating online that we don't have right now because we're all stuck on these platforms that are controlled by the richest man in the world, or, one of the richest in Mark Zuckerberg, wherever he lands on the chart now. I think he's down a bit because Meta's share price has fallen so much. But
Right.
I do think that that's kind of fundamental, right? Is that we need to kind of get over this kind of neoliberal idea that we need to leave so much to the private market, that the government or the public sector can have no role. And like, in the same way that I know it's more common up here in Canada and some other countries, but like we recognize that there's a role for public broadcasting, right? We recognize that there's a role for, of course, the public post office, right? To be providing people with mail and what have you. I also think that there's a role for a public institution to be creating technology for the public good and to be funded properly. So, we're not just saying, oh, that's the shitty technology, we should still be using Google and all the private stuff, but can actually, deliver things that work for people, and that are designed with people's needs in mind, and it can even like engage with them, right, in a cooperative way to learn what people need from technology,
Yeah.
instead of just developing it for to make a bunch of money for shareholders.
Mm, absolutely. I love that. And I think, one of the things my mind goes to is like the Nextdoor app, right? Which is sort of this like
Yeah.
disgusting way to like rat out on like which homeless person is, trying to eat. Like, like it's like, but what it does is it sort of sells you on community, get to know your neighbors, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it is privatized. It is only certain people. And it would be so nice if that was like part of your county, or that was part of your like your town. Like they, that was in public hands, not in some app again, or like the Citizen app to pick a worse
Yeah.
example, right? Kind of like crazy surveillance shit. Like it'd be nice if that
Yeah. I
was.
believe that app was previously called Vigilante,
There you go.
explicitly. So, yeah,
It was.
to give you an
It was.
idea of how it works. Yeah.
A good friend of mine did a doc on it, and I want to have her on to talk about it. But like, I love that vision, and I guess my question is, do we move toward that vision through some kind of, better regulation and
Mhm.
carving out, let's say, a certain amount of. I mean, I don't even know, like, because it's not like the airwaves or the media, like sort of the cable news, but some bandwidth at least for or seed money or
Yeah.
grants or whatever it is for like public endeavors or educational sites, right? Considering that what like 90% of the internet is porn, like if we're like, hey, okay, I think we should have like 5% should be educational, right? Or, 10% is in the public hands, etc.
Yeah. So I think there's many different ways to approach it. And I would say from both angles of what you're talking about, I do think that there needs to be more regulation of technology. We can look at stopping these companies from further growing and expanding, like Amazon's trying to do by buying MGM or Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, like stop these further kind of expansions of these companies, the consolidation that's happening, and also
Right.
maybe look at unwinding some of that size that they have, but also regulating what they do to ensure that the negative parts are more restrained, because ultimately if you're constraining what these massive monopolies can do now, you're also leaving an opening for other alternatives to come in there because they can't just keep buying everything up and expanding. But
Right.
then the
Of
other
course.
piece of that is, what do we do to encourage more public technology? And I would say that part of that needs to be to ensure the funding is there. And we often forget that, we have this idea that the tech sector is like all private money, all private companies, but there is still, and the only reason that Silicon Valley exists was because of public funding from the US government, from the US military, but that money still flows. And we're in a moment right now where that money is flowing more and more. We just had the CHIPS Act passed
Mhm,
recently to restrict,
mhm.
what China can do in terms of semiconductors. A lot of money went to Intel and a lot of big chip manufacturers, as a result of that, to encourage them to be producing chips in the United States. Elon Musk gets a ton of money for SpaceX and Starlink and things like that. A lot of these tech companies get public money and we don't kind of recognize it right now. So what we can do is we can say, actually, we should be taking more of that money, or we should have a specific set of money that goes into kind of a public cooperative that develops technology for the public good, that can maybe engage with libraries or other kind of local organizations to find out what people actually need from technology and then develop in response to that. So
Mhm.
there are many different ways that
It
it can be
isn't
framed.
designed around killing people. So, like,
Exactly, exactly.
because I'm like, okay, with like a NASA for tech, and then I'm like, isn't that just like DARPA or some other like really fucked up, how can
Yeah.
robots, maim
Mhm.
civilians?
Well, and here's the thing, right? Is a lot of the money for technological development comes from the military because
Mhm.
so many other parts of the government have been, cut back so much over the past number of decades. But the military is kind of like, you can't touch the military, right? It just needs to keep growing. And so they have the money to keep funding all of this development. And so that's why you get so much kind of technology that is oriented toward military purposes and then maybe later gets kind of like a commercial orientation, right? So the internet comes out of the military, of course, but even self-driving cars. Like the reason that in the 2010s we had all this excitement around self-driving cars was because in the first decade of the 2000s, the military was funding self-driving car research, and then Google got word of it, got excited about it, hired some of those people, and said, the stuff that the military is kind of trialing in the battlefield, well, now it's going to revolutionize cities, and we're all going to like get around in these robo taxis in a few years. Of course, that never actually happened, but you can just see like the relationships that exist there, that we don't always recognize that kind of happen behind the scenes.
Absolutely. I love it. Oh my god, every word I am doting on. And also it's it is the United States government, with one breath saying, well, Amazon needs to stop union busting, and then contracting with Amazon in the next breath. And you're like, if we were really serious about that, then there would be some kind of consequences. I mean, Amazon to me is just, it's got to go. It's got to be nationalized. There's just no way.
Yeah.
It's too fucking big. It is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And as a new mom, I don't want to give it up because I just want it to be privatized. But man, it's been saving my ass in these tough times and these sleepless nights. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.